Good morning.
How are you?
Fantastic.
Swell. 615-737-1045. That's the number if you want to jump in. You got the F&M Bank chat always at your disposal as well. Dumbest thing in sports this week. Don't forget that's in the second hour. You'll hear from Mike Vrabel and Will Levis in hour number 3. Speaking of Mike Vrabel, little hot yesterday, but it's always so funny when you see the reaction around a completely routine response from a football coach. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the severity of Mike Vrabel's reaction to a question that he thought was probably to a degree disrespectful about what reasons do you have for wanting to win a football game in Week 18, Mike, was basically the question that our buddy Gentry Estes at the Tennessean asked. How would you rate that, Lucas?
If not for the F-bomb, I would rate it as a very routine answer. But, let's not pretend NFL head coaches are dropping F-bombs at the podium every week.
Sure, but you've been at training camp. You've been within earshot of him. It's a pretty routine word for him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But he's pretty good. Considering who he is on the field, he's pretty damn good at holding it together at the press conferences, to be honest with you, even though, there's one moment a year where he bites one of our heads off and everybody delights in it. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 3.5, because there's an F-bomb.
Yeah, it's the context of being at a podium in a press conference that does make it a little jarring. Don't pretend like you didn't have a reaction when you heard that on the radio.
I out loud laughed,
right.
But we didn't, thankfully, because you are very swift and nobody else heard it on the radio, just on the live stream, which may give you other reasons to listen to the live stream from time to time. But anyway, it's a pretty normal reaction to a question that, depending on how you're looking at this, you may think is fair, you may think it's unfair. And again, I used the word disrespectful of the question. Is it disrespectful to ask an NFL head coach what reasons he has for winning? That's what I would like to know from you and from the audience, 615-737-1045. Let's go ahead and hear. Is the question a part of this, or is it just the reaction? What do you have back there?
Yeah, question's a part of it. You can't hear it very well.
Do you want me to preface this with the question, or you just want to roll tape?
The question was, why is it important to win on Sunday, in so many words, right?
Well, and I just want to make sure that we're a little more specific with it. Vrabel mentioned that it was important to win earlier in the press conference. Gentry Estes of the Tennessean circles back and says, Mike, you mentioned a lot of reasons for you guys to win on Sunday. Can you expand on some of that? And he was quite certain to expand on some of that.
He was expansive,
He was,
you would say.
Indeed.
Because it sucks to lose, Gentry.
Trey, ever need to show you anything?
Did you have another thought, or no? I'm just curious.
Well,
It sucks.
is not.
Losing. Awful. That's why I want to win. Because you don't sleep. You want to win for the players that bust their tail. That's it. It's not about, hey, we'll go into the offseason with a good note. Nobody knows what you did on January 7th or 8th or 6th in April when you come back. But, you want to see, just it all come together. And just put 4 quarters together. Win a game like we talked about. You come in here, well, close game. Yeah, we feel the same way. In that game the other day, we got to put ourselves into a competitive game where it's, back and forth, and there's some field position, and then you score, and you take care of the football. And we just hadn't done that in the opportunities that we had, that were like, okay, we fought and we were close, but I think that's why. You just put yourself in a competitive situation, come up with a way to, make a play in the second half to win the game. That's what I hope for. Sorry about my language.
So there's a lot going on there in that clip. I love that, when there's several parts, okay? There is the response, which is the correct one. There's a bunch of reasons that you want to see them win if you're the coach of that team. 2, and it may be the second best part about that clip, Lucas, is just Glennon wandering around in the middle of that question. Mike Vrabel moves on from Gentry Estes after the initial because it sucks. Glennon starts to stutter out a question, and Vrabel just gets bored with Glennon's question in real time and goes back to bite Gentry's head off. That may be my second favorite part of the quote.
You ever need to show you anything?
Did you have another thought or no?
Just Glennon stumbling around in the middle of all that. But he's right. I mean, what? I haven't talked to Gentry about this, so, and, it's not like I wouldn't say this to him, but, like, the question is kind of wild, right? To ask of a head coach in the National Football League, hey, Mike, can you expand on why it's important to win? And we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Look, it's a completely normal reaction to ask a Titans fan, hey, do you want him to win on Sunday? Yeah, probably not. And it'd be fair. But who's someone whose livelihood that this very much revolves around and who at their core are driven insane by the idea of losing. Insane. Like the Urban Meyer health stuff, right? Where people make fun of Urban Meyer because he has these moments of collapse and the stress is too much and all these different things. Like there's some of it because it's Urban Meyer. It makes him an easy target. But a lot of that for coaches is real. And you don't pity them because they make a lot of money and they're a football coach and there are more important jobs in the world than the football coach. But, like, that's real for these guys.
I still think that there's fans that don't quite grasp that or understand why a coach can't look past the benefit of a higher draft pick, right? There are fans that think that way. And what better way to sort of lay it out for those fans than the question that Gentry asked?
Sure.
I mean, you got a pretty good glimpse into why Mike Vrabel wants to win on Sunday, despite it being a completely meaningless game. A team that is 5-11, and other than maybe playing spoiler for Jacksonville and not allowing them to win a second straight AFC South title by beating you, why? Why does it matter to win on Sunday? Okay, there you go. He laid it out pretty good for people that might be asking that question.
So you think the question is fair?
Sure. It's one of the best answers we've gotten all season.
Sure, which also would lend itself to making it a good question. Because in my mind, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're asking the coach about why it's important to win, and
I get that.
And so, but it's what you've said there is good context, and why I'm more understanding of Gentry. And we talked about this, I think, a little bit yesterday. Like, if he's trying to lay it out for the fans, I don't know what his angle was.
Gentry's not asking the question for him. He's not asking Vrabel to tell him one-on-one, Gentry Estes, why do you want to win on Sunday? He's asking the question for the legions of Titans fans that do not want to win on Sunday.
And people don't understand that, though. Like, I think that gets lost in, inside baseball stuff, but we're not asking questions on behalf of ourselves. It's not, we are there to ask questions on behalf of you. And whether you like the answers or not, you can debate, or whether you like how the questions are asked or not, we can discuss, right? These are constant things at a press conference, but it's not like Gentry doesn't, I don't think Gentry cares about how Mike Vrabel views winning in this final game or all the different ways as much as he cares about providing something within the context of his column at the Tennessean for fans to read about, hey, there's not a single damn one of you that probably wants to win this football game. Few and far between, right? Like, there's the majority of Titans fans today are saying, no, spoiler, okay, whatever. I don't care anymore. Could have done that last week too. What happened? We got our asses kicked. So it's not like there's a lot. It's not like it's a big reach to say, why is it important for you to win, even though the odds are pretty insurmountable, and it looks very likely that you may go winless in the AFC South this year.
Gentry does a great job, by the way.
Yeah.
Covers every sport in this town, does it really well.
I think it's good context for fans to have. And, what happened immediately afterwards? Oh, I love that he showed emotion. I love that he showed fight. He's been, lethargic at the press conference. Yeah, most of these things. All of the press conferences, how many press conferences would you say that we do a year with Mike Vrabel?
Wow.
For that one clip to be the only thing that we're talking about.
During the regular season alone, it's 3-4 per week if you count the Friday little get-together on who's playing, who's not.
Buddy, I'm counting. So let's work our way through, starting with Sunday. Post-game press conference. Monday recap. Tuesday off for Players' Day off. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He's talking to us 5 days a week, and that's just the get-togethers with local media. That's not meeting with the television production staff. That's not his Titans radio obligations. And again, I'm not saying that you have to feel bad for the guy, but like he's in front of a microphone a lot, and for that to be the only real blow-up of the year when they're 5-11 is completely normal.
Wait, so how many is that? You said 4?
We talk to him, just us, 5 times a week.
So post-game?
Post-game, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Does Vrabel speak on Thursday?
Vrabel does not speak
It's just
on
coordinators
Thursday.
on Thursday.
That's right. That's an
So it's
important
4.
clarification by you.
Okay. So 4 times a week throughout the course of a 17-week regular season.
That, by the way, just started. Like, Vrabel used to talk on Thursdays. That's a recent development within the last, I think we've been just doing coordinators for 2 seasons now. But of the 4 previous, we've talked to him on Thursdays.
So that's 68 times, and not including training camp, and Vrabel talking basically every day after practice.
So that's the only time that he's really got, because I keep a thread of these things because they're funny. And people get a kick out of him. And he's a very emotive person. And when you get a glimpse at what it really looks like, that's a lot of fun for people, because I can't tell you the amount of players that, like, either current or former reached out yesterday and said, oh, Gentry put it on a tee for him, and Vrabel just knocked it out of the park. But also, great answer. 615-737-1045 is the number. Somebody asks in the F&M Bank chat, where you can live stream the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Fort on YouTube says, was Gentry the same guy Vrabel told to think like a man a couple weeks ago? Do we have that handy? Is that anywhere floating around? Do you not know what I'm talking about?
I don't even remember that, to be honest.
If you don't remember this? All right, we're gonna have to find it during the commercial break. We'll also get into why this year's college football playoff should be encouraging to Vols fans. That's next on 104.5 The Zone. All right, so I'm very disappointed that it is this hard to find that clip from a couple of weeks ago. Think like a man, think like an athlete, think the exact opposite of how you would think, and then you'll think like me. It's Mike Vrabel. We'll see if we can endeavor that. I've texted Jackson to see if he's got it saved anywhere easy for you, Lucas, because that you haven't heard that sound is exciting for me because I want to see your reaction when you see it played because we both know our buddy Stillman, that he's a bit of a trip. And that he was the person on the other end of that exchange is laugh out loud hilarious. But in the absence of that, we'll endeavor that for you. Don't forget, speaking of dumb things, the dumbest thing in sports this week at 11 o'clock. We'll have some fun there. Mine has to do with Mike Vrabel. Are you taking which NFL path are you going down? You have a choose your own adventure this week because your boy, he's always there for you, Aaron Rodgers. He's always there, but you don't have to take it every week.
I know. It would be the third week in a row if I did it again this week, but it's there. The material is there. What are you doing, man?
You remember a couple of years ago when people are pissed at ESPN because the 6 o'clock sports hour was like Jamel Hill and Michael Smith and it was too hot. And now you've got Aaron Rodgers talking about Jeffrey Epstein on Pat McAfee's show. Come on.
He's like turning into Alex Jones right before our eyes.
It's not funny because he's got a very big platform and it's kind of problematic, but it's also, there's a lot of things that are kind of problematic that you can't help but laugh at as we get ready for another election cycle. Anyway, 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. So college football, obviously a big topic this week. We're going to get to the Kirby Smart sound. We didn't have time for it yesterday. His shock and horror about what his football team did to Florida State. And anyway, that's a very, very serious subject matter, and we'll get to Kirby later. But with the college football national championship set, you got Washington, you got Michigan. What kind of doors does that final, if not the result, because the result is going to be something different, or at least different than it's been basically in the last 10 years from what we've been accustomed to seeing, whether it's Alabama, Clemson, or Ohio State, the regular people. How optimistic should it make Vols fans, coupled with the idea that the field is going to be bigger than it's ever been next year for the foreseeable future, that a 12-team playoff, would a 12-team playoff have included Tennessee this year? No. It would not have.
Yeah, Tennessee, the number 21 team in the country going into the Citrus Bowl.
It would have included both Florida State and Georgia, though, ironically enough.
Yes.
So something to keep in mind, which, again, lends itself to the idea that this thing is now, if you didn't feel like it was wide open with 4, well, one, you've just been proven wrong because the playing field has been leveled by the select few universities who are always in the college football playoff no longer can just take all of the talent. It is as level a playing field as it's ever been. That doesn't mean that it's, completely level. It's not like Vandy's got the door wide open for him now, but Tennessee and the trajectory that they're on, coupled with the idea of Nico and promising, not trying to get too ahead of ourselves with Nico in the Citrus Bowl on Monday and how he looked in that Josh Heupel offense. But it's fair to expect now a return to form for the Tennessee offense from what we saw 2 seasons ago. So as you look at this, as a Vols fan, does it make you more optimistic? The outlook of college football right now, this Michigan-Washington final, and the idea that the field will be expanded. Does it change your expectations at all? Because I think coming out of 2022, we would have said, all right, they messed around and almost were in contention for a national championship. We're looking at Milton and saying, there's reason to think that might not be realistic next year. But in a 4-team construct, Tennessee was right there. And then the collapse against South Carolina and how everything got derailed and Hendon Hooker's season-ending injury, and it fell short. It fell well short. But whether it's 4 teams or 12 teams next year, this is as optimistic as Vols fans could possibly be about their chance to compete for a national championship. And a playoff appearance is now, that's where the bar is. You got to get in next year, right?
Yes.
You got to get in.
Unequivocally. Yeah, It's almost like the rules feel like they've changed a little bit in college football.
How do you mean?
When you look at what we're about to have with Michigan and Washington, it's sort of this feeling of things that are possible that didn't feel possible unless you recruited at a certain level, unless your talent acquisition was at a certain level.
Isn't that a good thing?
Yes, absolutely.
But some people don't think so.
So Ari Wasserman of The Athletic, and if nobody follows Ari, he's a good writer, a good podcaster, but he has built a lot of his, journalistic profile covering college football on Stars Matter.
Isn't that the name of the podcast?
Yeah, that's Ari's thing, Stars Matter. And Ari's whole basis of that is you cannot win a national championship unless you recruit to a certain level. And now here we are with a couple of teams in Michigan and Washington that have fallen below that level. We mentioned it yesterday, Michigan outside the top 15 in the 24/7 Sports Talent Composite that compiles the talent profile based on recruiting and transfer portal rankings of every team's roster and ranks them. Washington is 26 in that composite. Ari tweeted this yesterday. He said there have been only 3 teams since the year 2000 who have won national titles without having signed a top 5 class in any of the previous 4 years. 2010 Auburn, 2016 Clemson, and 2018 Clemson. The quarterbacks for those teams were Cam Newton, who dragged that Auburn team to the national championship game. That roster was nowhere near talented enough to win a title. Cam Newton was. Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence for Clemson. And there was talent on those Clemson teams. I mean, T. Higgins and Amari Rodgers and Kevin Dodd. And there was a lot of talent on those Clemson teams.
I'm sorry, Kevin Dodd.
Or I guess Dodd wasn't on that 2016. When did Dodd get drafted? Was he drafted in 16?
Dodd was drafted in 16, yeah, because it was Kevin Dodd, 32. It was Austin Johnson later in the second round, and then Derrick Henry was the third of their second-round picks.
So, bad example, but Dexter Lawrence and all the talent that's come through Clemson
listen,
over the years.
Dodd had like a hell of a run that season.
Oh, he was a great player.
Like he played himself into that. So while I, I'm sure Titans fans heard that name and just
that probably shouldn't have thrown that name out there.
Well, it's just it has different meanings for two different segments of football fans.
So Ari lays out this stat: the 3 teams since 2000 that have won titles without having signed a top 5 class in any of the previous 4 years, they have all had a star leading the charge at quarterback. Well, now, no matter what happens on Monday, we're going to have our 4th team since 2000 to win a national championship without signing a top 5 recruiting class in each or any of the last 4 years, whether it's Michigan or Washington. So, of course, Tennessee looks at that as something that's achievable in 2024. Because when you look at 2022, year 2 under Heupel, Tennessee was number 19 in that talent composite that year. That gap was obviously made up by a special season from Hendon Hooker at quarterback. And what happens this year? Tennessee moves up in that composite. Their talent profile was exactly 3 spots better this year. They're number 16 in the talent composite. They were held back by offensive struggles, quarterback play, namely. And now in 2024, it's an opportunity to have another special season from a quarterback, which we believe to be possible under Nico, and improved talent and depth across the board. Of course, the expectation should be to be in the playoff and to potentially make a run at the playoff. And then the news yesterday that Brew McCoy is coming back for Tennessee in 2024 at 217 yards and 1 touchdown in only 5 games played before he went down with that ankle injury against South Carolina. Huge news for this Tennessee offense that now around Nico will have Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Deontay Thornton, Mike Matthews, the 5-star coming in, Chris Brazzell, the Tulane wide receiver. And it feels like it's shaping up for Tennessee to make another run at this thing the way they did in 2022 when they missed the playoff by that much. So, of course, it should feel attainable. And what happened in the college football playoff semifinals make it feel that much more so for me. Feels like the rules have changed a little bit as far as what it takes to win a national championship in college football.
Just quickly, and then we can get back to this discussion because you brought up the talent that they'll have, not just the returning talent, but the talent that they're going to acquire via the transfer portal and their signing class. The deal with Texas A&M, the wide receiver Evan Stewart, who is in the transfer portal, according to On3 Sports, Tennessee is moving on from recruiting Evan Stewart. And Lucas, you had sent a couple of tweets from him into the group chat yesterday, so I wonder if you could provide some context on that, because he mentioned wherever he goes, he wanted to prioritize his mental and physical health. So I didn't know how to read into that necessarily, because it was the first that I had been paying attention to it, honestly, once you sent those tweets. But I don't know what to make of Tennessee not pursuing him and then him getting out there with that message.
Oh, I did not relate the two.
Okay.
I did send them in back to back, so I could see.
Well, I did. That's why I wanted some clarification here, because you sent them back to back, and then I just didn't know if one had something to do with the other. I wasn't able to find any reporting.
That's not what I mean, Tennessee's wide receiver room, and that's not to say Tennessee wouldn't take Evan Stewart. I don't know what the situation there is, but Tennessee's wide receiver room, the names that I just listed, is pretty robust for a team that pretty much has a three-man rotation at that spot anyway. And that's not even including Chaz Nimrod and the players that actually got in on some of these games this year. So, I don't think they're related. But Evan Stewart did tweet, the former A&M receiver in the portal. He said, "Wherever I go, I just hope the training staff can tell me the actual diagnosis of my injuries for my physical and mental health." To me, that was more of an indictment on Jimbo's program at A&M. That was interesting. But, reportedly Tennessee is moving on from recruiting Evan Stewart. I think Tennessee feels pretty set at wide receiver.
You can jump in the conversation if you want via the phones. You have access to that. 615-737-1045. We'll take some phone calls here in just a second. A quick reminder that 3HL is going to be out at Buffalo Wild Wings in Franklin for their next Titans football feast. So you can stop by for your chance to win Titans tickets and giveaways each hour, thanks to Miller Lite and Buffalo Wild Wings. They've got the full schedule, although this would be the last one, right? This would be the last one? I don't know that. I just assume, since it's the Titans football feast and the season's ending, that this might be the last one. Anyway, in case it's not, there's a schedule, 1045thezone.com/TFF for more information. So it's always fun to go hang out with 3HL at a B-Dubs near you. Start with Jason in Murfreesboro. Hey, Jason.
Hey, guys. I just want to talk about the college playoff with you guys. We're going to a 12-team playoff next year. The thing about it is if those teams that don't make it into the 12 teams, I feel like a lot more people are going to be opting out. But I do realize why they're doing the 12 teams, so it keeps players from opting out so they can actually have a chance at the national championship. But the problem I see is some of these players are going to look at it like, man, I got to play 3 or 4 games just to get to the national championship after, in the playoffs. They're not just playing 1 or 2 games anymore. You got to play multiple teams after your regular season, so they might opt out because they might have a chance of getting, injured before they make it to the NFL. I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Thanks for the call, Jason.
It will be interesting what the ripple effect is of that when it comes to the opt-outs, because there are plenty of games this year that were affected by that. Georgia, Florida State, more than any. And
we'll talk about that when we get to Kirby, because I think there's Kirby a little bit of a misconception there, and one that I think it's important to go over. But anyway,
we'll hear from Kirby on it. But the expanded 12-team playoff solves that issue, right? We're not talking about Florida State no showing and everybody opting out and the game basically being a sham if we're in a 12-team playoff.
Frauds.
So, I think it'll be interesting on the outskirts of that 12-team playoff, those teams that barely miss out, if that just gets pushed down, so to speak, where instead of number 6 Florida State, number 5 Florida State, whatever they are, having all those opt-outs because they just missed out, it ends up being number 13 or 14 Missouri or something like that. That'll be interesting to see.
Jackson has found or been able to locate where he saved that Vrabel clip. I just texted it to the group, Lucas. So by the end of the segment, perhaps we can end with Vrabel taking another media member's head off, because why not? That's fun. So to the point about opt-outs and things like that, it's such a complicated balance because there's no one solution. It's not just about it's about the college football schedule. And we'll get to this more when we talk about Kirby. And I know there's going to be a little bit of this in SEC observations. There's also going to be a little bit at 11:20 when we get into the idea of is there a straight up fix for the problems that the college football schedule has posed? We'll spend some time on that. I just think that we are in an age, because it's not just about opting out to pursue pro prospects and things like that. The Ward is the last name of the quarterback, the transfer portal quarterback, who just decided that he was going to declare for the pros.
Cam Ward from Washington State.
Cam Ward. Okay, so Cam Ward, who was in the transfer portal, who was kind of, I don't want to say holding some schools hostage while he made a decision about the transfer portal, just all of a sudden said, okay, instead of the transfer portal and committing to another university, and maybe universities who have spent time and resources and things like that recruiting me to come play college football next year, I'm good. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna opt out altogether, and I'll take a chance that I may be. I mean, he's probably a 5th round pick, maybe a 4th round pick. Cam Ward, as things stand right now, we'll see. It's an interesting year for quarterbacks, and we know that the league can't get enough of them based on how many get hurt and need to play. But I just think that you're always going to have these situations now where the opt-outs affect it to some extent. Because, to Jason's point, the college football calendar is complicated, and also it lends itself to making a longer college football season, which is going to have some kind of impact from a health standpoint. It's why we talk about December football in the NFL the way that we do, because they're literally different teams that are playing in front of us. Do you have it?
No.
No?
No, I can't try. I don't know what date. It's saved in a folder that has the date of when that happened. I have no concept of when that happened. If it was a month ago, 2 months ago, no idea.
It was after the bye week, so that would have been week 8. It would have been a press conference in week 8. That's about as good as I can. That's about as much help as I can give you. Perhaps Scott in New Jersey will buy us some time to see if Lucas can't locate this thing. Hey, Scott.
I don't know how much time I'll buy on that one.
Okay.
But first time, long time, fellas. Just an outlook. Obviously, Vrabel going into the offseason is going to have more control over roster building than he ever has. And I know it's a small sample size. It's a one-off sample size. But a guy like David Long, who Vrabel was very vocal and adamant about not being a part of the future. And, not only did he go get an opportunity somewhere, but has, statistically stood out, with Miami and been a difference maker.
He played in every game. He's played in every game, David Long, this year.
Absolutely. So I'm just curious, what the outlook is where, Vrabel so the other way on a guy like that, and he's going to have dozens of players like that he's building this roster around. Is he, potentially going to impact us for seasons to come if he's making, bad decisions like that? I know it's a small sample size, but appreciate it. Sure.
So I guess there's no perfect way to do this, and you're gonna have some missed opportunities. David Long is probably a missed opportunity. Like the linebackers are not good enough. The money on David Long was not big enough for that just to be a casual. What do we need? We'll find another one. Especially with what happened with Monty Rice, and Alshire is good enough, but David Long is the better player. But like, if I'm going to do David Long and Vrabel screwed up that, can I not just come back and say, well, DeAndre Hopkins, that's Mike Vrabel's guy, and Hopkins didn't have a ton of options, but one of the options, and the other being New England, so maybe he didn't have any options whatsoever but to come here to Tennessee. I just think if you're going to do the personnel, and I'm not excusing it, you want to get as many personnel decisions right as humanly possible. I just think that it's, in the small sample size that we have, if Long is an example of a bad decision, then Hopkins is an example of a good decision. And a lot of times those things are going to balance themselves out. All right, play it.
You'll never think like me, Jared. We're nothing alike. So No, yeah, I'm not. I'm the dumbest person in here. I promise you. I guarantee you I'm the dumbest person in here. But we will never think alike in anything that we do. So if you ever want to think how I'm thinking, just think the opposite. think like a dude, think like an athlete, think like a grown man, and then you'll think how I'm thinking.
All right, so a big weekend in college football. The biggest game of the season coming up on Monday, the national championship between Michigan and Washington. The most noticeable thing about this particular championship game is a lack of participation by the SEC, the best conference in college football. Are we still saying that?
Yes. SEC went 5-4 in bowl games this year. Don't care. When the SEC gets surpassed in terms of routine championships, NFL draft picks, that's when we can start to have those conversations. But we are bookending the 4-team playoff era. The first ever 4-team playoff was a national championship game between Oregon, Marcus Mariota and Oregon, and Ohio State. And the last national championship in the 4-team era between Michigan and Washington. So bookending with an SEC-less national championship game in the 4-team era.
Nonetheless, observations. Wait.
Yeah,
what?
I'm sad today. So
what are you doing?
For old time's sake, we're going to do this for the last time.
Damn it.
40 bowls in 14 days. 40 bowls in 14 days.
I'm sad because New Year's Day is always one of the best sports days of the year for me when you have the bowl games leading into the college football playoff semifinals the way it was this year. I'm glad that college football changed that to where the playoff semifinals are no longer on New Year's Eve. Do you remember last year, all the side-by-side videos of the New Year being rung in on the East Coast, like at the exact same time that Ohio State's missing that kick to send Georgia to the national championship
It's
game?
unbelievably
Let's
stupid.
not do that again, and I'm glad we're not doing that. New Year's Day is the appropriate day for it, but it's always sobering when you finish the madness that is bowl season and you're sitting here looking at a national championship game next Monday and then no more college football until August. And I'm sad that I won't have any days to sit and binge college football for quite some time. So let's reminisce on the bowl season that was for the SEC in particular. Mention the 5-4 record. Don't care about that. We'll just do superlatives. SEC bowl season superlatives. Best performance. Buck, off the top of your head, do you have a team that comes to mind in the SEC when you think best performance?
Well, I mean, Georgia would be the answer, yeah?
Sure. There's an asterisk on that game for obvious reasons.
No, there shouldn't. We'll get to that. Not yet, but we'll get to that. I don't believe there should be an asterisk.
As far best performance, I'm taking everything into account. The performance on the field, how meaningful it was to that program.
Missouri.
I'm going Ole Miss.
Oh.
38-25 over Penn State in the Peach Bowl. The first ever 11-win season in Ole Miss program history, and they are going into next year with a great feeling around that program. Jackson Dart coming back, the noise that Lane Kiffin is making, the moves he's making in the transfer portal. This was a complete performance by Ole Miss. They dominated a Penn State defense that's been one of the best in the country all season long. Not a good bowl season for quote-unquote elite Big Ten defenses like Iowa's given up 28 points to Tennessee's offense. Obviously, one of those touchdowns was a pick six, and Penn State giving up 38 to Ole Miss. So best performance going Ole Miss. Worst performance, Buck, anyone come to mind? It happened here in Nashville.
Oh, I was there. I was there for the first half before I caught my flight to Cleveland. I don't know if did you meet my buddy Worth Campbell at the bowling event?
I don't know.
Anyway, he was kind enough to invite me. They got a box at Nissan Stadium. The first time I tailgated outside of Nissan Stadium. It was a great time because they're all Auburn fans, and then we got into the game, and very, very quickly, after a lot of Terrapin trash talk in the suite that I was in, Maryland just went out there and pantsed Auburn.
Hugh Freeze was asked about the game plan after Auburn's blowout loss to Maryland at Nissan Stadium, 31-13, and he said, I didn't get too involved in it for the most part until this week because of recruiting. Anytime you struggle like we did, I don't feel like the plan was great. So we'll talk about the college football calendar and all of its flaws. But Hugh Freeze not even being involved in game planning until this week because of recruiting, definitely indicative of a flawed college football calendar. 31-13 loss for Auburn.
And it wasn't that close.
No, it wasn't. Against the Taulia Tagovailoa-less Maryland offense. And, that game, never in question. Worst performance, Auburn Tigers. The best vibes, Buck, the best vibes in the SEC. on bowl season.
Well, I said Missouri earlier.
It's
I'd probably
Missouri.
go Missouri again with
It's
the win over
Missouri.
the Ohio State. And listen, Ohio State's in a weird spot. They don't have Marvin Harrison Jr. They don't have their quarterback. I'm not excusing Ryan Day. I'm certainly Ohio State fans are not excusing Ryan Day. But the stakes in that game are so much different for Missouri than they are for Ohio State.
100%. 100%. Missouri obviously wanted to be there. Cody Schrader, another big performance. They rushed for 200 yards as a unit. And Devin Brown, like you said, has to come in for Kyle McCord for Ohio State at quarterback. He throws 6 passes before he goes down, and Ohio State's down to a third stringer. They just cannot move the football. Ohio State and Missouri with a deserved win to cap what has been a fantastic season for Eli Drinkwitz. I don't even think the most optimistic of us could have said 11 wins and a New Year's Six bowl win over Ohio State as a ceiling for Missouri football. Huge, huge season for the Tigers, who also will have their eyes on a 12-team playoff spot next year. Worst vibes, Buck, of bowl season in the SEC?
Alabama?
I'm going Kentucky.
Okay.
Kentucky, who loses 38-35 against Clemson in the Gator Bowl. This was an amazing game. Incredible fourth quarter. Clemson outscores Kentucky 28-14 in the fourth quarter, but that tells you how electric that game was. It's been a weird year for Kentucky. They finished 7-6. All the weird stuff around Mark Stoops to A&M, and A&M fans basically having a social media revolt over it. So Kentucky fans are like, okay, we get to keep our coach. Are we happy about that right now? I don't know. The vibes are strange. Kentucky recruited like Kentucky does under Mark Stoops. Pretty decent for their standard. They made a lot of moves in the portal. Brock Vandagriff comes in at quarterback. They make an excellent linebacker addition also from Georgia. But I think we could say the Devin Leary experience was disappointing at Kentucky after a 7-6 season.
I think they expected a closer return to form. He doesn't have to be 2021 Will Levis, but I think they expected an offensive production that was closer to that than what they experienced in 2022. I would say that's underwhelming, and that sucks for Devin Leary because I thought he could have made I thought he could have made some good money for himself this year.
The best game that everyone watched, the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
Alabama, Michigan. Did you see the viewership numbers on that?
No.
Upwards of 27 million, over 27 million.
I mean, we're not surprised.
No,
Michigan,
not at all.
Alabama, Harbaugh.
Are you
Saban,
kidding me?
yeah.
In the Rose Bowl, in that setting. By the way, there's been a lot of pushing from people like Kirk Herbstreit saying, make the Rose Bowl the national championship game. And I couldn't agree more. Every year, the national championship game in the Rose Bowl, I can't think of a single neutral site in all of college football that matches the spirit of college football like the Rose Bowl does.
Yeah, but buddy, we've just spent 3 years talking about how the spirit of college football is not important to these people that want to make money off college football.
Right. But you can check both boxes with this. Everybody loves the Rose Bowl. You're going to make all your money. The ratings are going to be fantastic. And it just feels special, man. Even watching it on TV. I don't care about NRG Stadium in Houston. The national championship will be there next Monday.
It was just there. It's very underwhelming for a national championship.
Sterile. Right. At SoFi Stadium.
It's out there in a medical park. Like, there's nothing around it.
No.
The vibes are weird.
Yeah. Give me the Rose Bowl. Anyway, that's besides the point. The best game that no one watched in SEC bowl season, the ReliaQuest Bowl. Formerly the Outback Bowl. This game was nuts. 35-31 LSU over Wisconsin. Nobody watched it because it was the first game of the day on New Year's Day, and especially here, Tennessee starts, they kick off an hour afterwards, and then all the craziness of the college football playoff semifinals.
Of all the TVs that were on in that bar that you and I were at, there was maybe one on the LSU game and 35 on the Tennessee game.
Went under the radar. No Jaden Daniels in this game, but everybody else played for LSU. Malik Neighbors, all their defensive stars. Garrett Nussmeier, 395 yards, 3 touchdowns. LSU was down multiple scores several times in this game. They were down 14-0 in the first quarter. They were down at halftime. They surged, outscoring Wisconsin 21-10 in the second half to win in a shootout. That was a really good football game. And now I'm sad.
Because it's over?
It's over.
I'm sorry, bud.
But I'll smile because it happened.
Yeah, if not for the Tennessee game, we probably would be, at least the college football world is probably talking as much about Nussmeier as they are about Nico, right? About like 2 ascending young quarterbacks who are going to be the faces of their respective programs next year?
I don't know. I don't know if Nussmeier is going to be the starter for LSU next year. Certainly he's not the blue chip 5-star guy that Nico is in terms of the hype. But that'll be interesting. Mike Denbrock, LSU offensive coordinator, moving on to Notre Dame. And Matt House appears to be remaining as the defensive coordinator for an LSU defense that was probably the biggest reason they didn't contend for the SEC West this year. So interesting offseason to come in Baton Rouge.
615-737-1045 is the number. You need that number. You know why? It's the dumbest thing in sports this week. Next.
It is 11 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Tennessee Titans finish out the regular season on Sunday against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They will be on the practice field today as all eyes are on rookie quarterback Will Levis after leaving Sunday's game with a foot injury. Mike Vrabel said yesterday that Levis will be evaluated throughout the course of the week.
We'll see. We'll evaluate that through the week. We'll see how practice goes, and then we'll prepare accordingly and make sure that we give everybody the best opportunity to win the football game. So we'll see everybody's health and as they work through treatment today and practice and treatment through the week.
On the flip side, Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who missed last week's game due to a shoulder injury, will practice today on a limited basis. He is day-to-day, according to head coach Doug Peterson. Mike Vrabel and Will Levis will meet with the media today coming up in the noon hour. Tennessee football, the Vols will return veteran wide receiver Brew McCoy in 2024. He announced on social media Tuesday 17 catches this past season for 217 yards and a touchdown in 5 games before going down with a season-ending injury. On the hardwood, the 5th-ranked Vols cruise past Norfolk State 87-50 on Tuesday. They tip off SEC play at home against Ole Miss Saturday, and the Nashville Predators improved to 21-16-1 with a 3-0 home win over the Chicago Blackhawks. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What happened to Matt House, Lucas? What happened? 30 seconds after we went to commercial break, you talking about the LSU defensive coordinator. What happened?
Oh, they're keeping Matt House. Interesting decision from Brian Kelly. Literally 30 seconds after we hit the break, Pete Thamel and Bruce Feldman hit Twitter reporting that he has been fired in LSU, cleaning house on the defensive side of the coaching staff. And Brian Kelly now has to replace both coordinators going into 2024.
Not the worst thing in the world if you're Brian Kelly, especially in this hugely complex coaching environment. It's not just a complicated environment for players and player decisions and all these different things, but it is so hard to get good coaches to stay in college football or to keep them at certain spots that doesn't lead them out of college football because of how, just hellish the recruiting environment has become, compiled with name, image, and likeness, having certain expectations. I know how much you're paying that guy because I read it on On3 Sports and their valuation. How much are you going to pay me based on that knowledge? Having to deal with that with 18-year-olds? No, thank you. On top of the transfer portal and how it basically, listen, I'm not pitying coaches because the balance of power is just leveling out the way that it should have been. It's probably an overcorrection to a certain extent, but it's leveling out more than it has, and coaches just have to find a way to work through it. But it's as complicated a time to be a coach in college football as ever before.
Kirby Smart had some thoughts on that we can talk about coming up.
Here in just a minute, we will do the dumbest thing in sports this week as well. Momentarily, we have something to give away for the dumbest thing in sports this week. Don't call yet. Not yet. But when we play the music, Lucas, what do they have the potential to win today?
We do this every week, the Feed Your Flock feature, courtesy of the best hot chicken in Nashville, Hattie B's. You will win a catered lunch for your business, your office party, whatever it might be, from Hattie B's. So if you give us the dumbest thing in sports this week, the best submission will get this catered meal from Hattie B's that is valued at $225.
Yum. I'm thinking about Hattie B's right now, as a matter of fact. Hot chicken sounds really, really good. Especially when the weather's colder, I don't know, something about hot chicken. Maybe it's just the placebo effect. The word hot at a cold time of year.
That's fine.
I could do some Hattie B's. We'll take a phone call first, and then we'll do the dumbest thing in sports this week. Big O wants to talk about Bama and Michigan.
Yes. And watching the talking heads on TV, it's like they didn't see the same game I watched on that game. Saban did, and listen, I am not Alabama fan. I wanted them to lose. But Alabama made adjustments in the second half, and they shut them boys down all the second half except that last drive where they let them tie that ball game up. But if you listen to the talking heads, it's like Michigan controlled that ball game. Well, they didn't. Alabama choked, and they let them score to tie that game. But that's not what you hear. And I think Alabama is. I've got a buddy. He still hadn't come out of the witness protection plan yet. He still won't talk about it. And I think that's why they're so hurt. They let that game get away. That was their game to take, and it's not Michigan controlled it. Yeah, they sacked him right and left, and their offensive line, Alabama, looked like the Titans line part of that game. But that was Alabama's game. The defense let them down. Couldn't let them score there at the end. Thank you for the time. Y'all have a great day.
Much appreciated, Big O. Thank you for the call. There's a lot there that we can talk about. Why don't we do that a little bit before the Kirby Smart clip? Because I do want to dive into some of what he said there. I think Nick Saban's kind of getting a raw deal with the way that this is being covered. And, again, lowly underdog Nick Saban does not need me to come to his defense. But I do think that some things about that ending are being misconstrued. First, we have something to do.
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
"What the is this?"
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some more now.
something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot.
You are really dumb. For real.
It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Rising Show.
It sure is, and it's presented by the Good Feet Stores. Not doing the things you love because of your foot, leg, or back pain. The folks at the Good Feet Store have been helping people like you feel better with custom arch support systems designed to alleviate that foot, knee, or back pain. Locations in Nashville, Franklin, Mount Juliet, Murfreesboro, and now Clarksville. Visit the Good Feet Stores today. So, for the opportunity to win a Feed Your Flock package from Hattie B's, give us the dumbest thing in sports this week. 615-737-1045. That is a catered lunch or, depending on what time of day you want. It could be whatever time of day that you desire. Courtesy of Hattie B's, a catered lunch for up to 15 people, valued at $225. 615-737-1045. All you got to do is tell us the dumbest thing in sports this week. I will start, and I'll start with everything that's happening around Mike Vrabel. Now, he got aggregated nationally yesterday with it effing sucks to lose clip. And it spurred on or kind of reignited a level of interest in Mike Vrabel's job that I think is a bit ridiculous. Now, there are reports out there from a variety of different outlets, including I don't want to call him. Jason La Canfora has a very, very complicated background as far as NFL reporting goes. But I will say, just for context, that Jason La Canfora, who many Titans fans think to be and know to be not the most credible person, is saying that there's a rift between Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. That's something that's been put out there before, whether it's by Greg Bedard of the Boston Sports Journal or anybody else. And it's easier to do with a 5-win football team than it is with an 11-win football team. But there's some smoke there. I'm not gonna BS you. Like, it's not a perfect working situation that's going on in the Titans facility right now. But I think that the further that people try to extrapolate it out to Mike Vrabel not being the Titans coach at the end of the season, that is the dumbest thing in sports this week. In order for Mike Vrabel to not be the Titans head coach next year, the Titans ownership group would have to not want Mike Vrabel to be the head coach next year. Now, could something change between now and the end of the season? Sure, I guess. It's possible. I don't know why it would now, as opposed to the last, 3 months of football, even though the things that have transpired in the last 3 months of football have been hideous by every stretch of the imagination. But as things stand right now, the ownership group still wants Mike Vrabel to be their head coach. Anything beyond that acknowledges Mike Vrabel not being the head coach of the Tennessee Titans next year is outside of anybody else's control. It's outside of Bob Kraft's control. For all the Patriots fans who are, got a I don't want to be inappropriate, but are thirsty for him. It is an interesting topic, I guess, because Mike is well respected in the league, but there's a lot of people talking about Mike Vrabel's job security and job status that clearly have no idea what's going on with his job security or job status. Everything down to Mike Lombardi putting out there that Mike Vrabel was on an expiring deal and saying, oh, no, that's my bad. He's got 2 years left. Okay, well, which is it? It's just a lot of noise. I don't think there's anything really credible about Mike Vrabel not being here next year. The fact that we still have to talk about it is because I guess Titans fans are interested by it. Or at least what's the poll saying? Are people actually interested in this crap? Or is it just something that, gets thrown out there, 50 people send it to us on Twitter, and we move on with our day?
No, I think people are definitely interested in this type of stuff.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's fine. Well, there's no reason to be yet. Not yet. That's why it's the dumbest thing in sports this week.
Dumbest thing in sports this week is also David Tepper, the owner of the Carolina Panthers. Has he taken the mantle from Dan Snyder, who is no longer obviously an NFL owner? Somebody has to take that from him. We talked about it after Snyder was on the outs. Okay, who gets that now? Who's the most hated owner?
Irsay.
In the NFL, you said Irsay. I think Tepper's getting there. Just as far as people looking at his behavior and being like, what are you doing, man? Time after time. Obviously, the cycling through the head coaches with multiple teams that he owns. But if you missed it, the National Football League has fined Carolina Panthers chairman and owner David Tepper $300,000 for, quote, unacceptable conduct in Jacksonville during a 26-0 loss by the Panthers to the Jags when he threw a drink at a Jaguars fan that was harassing him, right? I don't know, hurling insults at him in the owner's box. He threw a drink at the guy.
Not even a drink. It couldn't even be, it wasn't even as respectable as throwing a full drink. It was some ice and some backwash that he threw at a guy.
Here's the statement from David Tepper. I am deeply passionate about this team and regret my behavior on Sunday. I should have let NFL stadium security handle any issues that arose. I respect the NFL's code of conduct and accept the league's discipline for my behavior. So I am deeply passionate about this team. And I should have let NFL stadium security handle any issues that arose. A very well done PR statement of it wasn't my fault, but I accept this punishment.
Yeah, because he's the type that's sitting there combative. Do you have the Blaine Bishop breaking news sound just so I can recklessly speculate very quickly? If you're new to the show, that's how we indicate that we are going to recklessly speculate. David Tepper is the kind of person that does not want to apologize for that, right?
Absolutely.
Like somebody, he's sitting on a conference call with Roger Goodell and somebody from the union or something like that, sitting there. David, just all you got to do is say you're sorry for throwing a drink at a guy. We won't even fine you. We won't even fine you if you just come out and say you're sorry. No, I'd rather pay $300,000 and not take the blame for throwing a drink. What a scumbag. Like, I don't know the dude, and chances are I'm not going to get to know David Tepper. If this thing makes him this kind of unhappy, is he really better off as an NFL owner? Maybe the money is such that it doesn't matter and that he's willing to eat that level of unhappiness and misery that it seems to cause him because God knows he's not any good at it. I just think that is such scumbag behavior. And that's, I'm not the person to say, hey, Mr. Elitist, don't be so elite, okay? Like, my tone does not very often give off that at all. But this guy is words I probably can't say on
a joke.
FCC radio.
He's a joke.
He's a joke. That's fair. 615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? For the opportunity to win a great Feed Your Flock package from Hattie B's. Let's start with Curtis in Nashville.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Great.
All right, yeah, so mine has to go out to Aaron Rodgers and what he said yesterday on the Pat McAfee show about Jeffrey Epstein and Jimmy Kimmel. I think that was he's already got too much time on his hands, and, you just kind of leave him to his own devices, and he goes out and says something like that and attacks Jimmy Kimmel. So I think that's pretty dumb, not unexpected, but that's got to get my vote for the dumbest thing in sports this week.
He's just every week with this guy. Every week. I don't care about Aaron Rodgers this way. Now, if he's going to say, like, this is a huge headline across the world of not just sports, but now entertainment, because Jimmy Kimmel responded to him on social media.
And threatened legal action.
As he should.
Yes, over insinuating that he was on the Epstein list.
What do you do? Like, what is McAfee thinking? Because it's no disrespect to Pat, but is Pat McAfee the one that you really want in the middle of the Jeffrey Epstein conversation? Like, are you going to ask him follow-ups about what he's just said on your giant mega platform, Pat? And maybe that's why Rodgers is comfortable. And I'm not, like, accusing Pat of, like, Pat's not a journalist. Pat's Aaron Rodgers' golfing buddy.
Rodgers is turning into the most attention-seeking person in the NFL.
It's so bad.
In the NFL.
It's so bad. So, like, I'm not upset at Pat McAfee for not asking hardcore journalistic follow-ups of Aaron Rodgers, who's just reckless as all hell. I don't know what is ESPN thinking at that moment. Anyway, given that Jimmy Kimmel is a part of the ABC family. ESPN, owned by ABC, they're all under the same umbrella. That's starting some fires that ESPN doesn't want to deal with. Anyway, we'll take more phone calls for the dumbest thing in sports this week coming up next. 615-737-1045. We'll also tell you how Kirby Smart wants to fix college football. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
Life is busy. We could all use some extra time in our day, which is exactly why Two Rivers Ford offers mobile service. We'll bring the service to your driveway at no additional charge. Oil changes, brakes, batteries, the certified technicians at Two Rivers will perform basic maintenance on your vehicle wherever you are, so you'll have more time for moments like this. Schedule your mobile service appointment by scanning the QR code or calling Two Rivers Ford today.
All right. What you got? What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Have you, so $225 worth of Hattie B's is a tremendous amount of chicken. What is the most amount of, can you assign a dollar value to the most amount of chicken you've eaten in one sitting? Because I would argue the last time you and I did a show at Hattie B's at the factory in Franklin, that we got close collectively because our guy, and I'm blanking on, I'm doing a bad job. I'm blanking on our guy's name who literally provided us with George, what's the famous Christmas movie? George from
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. That's how we are going to remember his name. George from It's a Wonderful Life. And instead of, being the angel on our shoulders, he's the angel that provides us hot chicken and Gouda mac and cheese and whatever else.
Pimento mac and
cheese and everything else that they're putting out at Hattie B's. Literally everything on the menu. So I would say that we got close to $225 worth of chicken and chicken-related items. That's probably close. Malika in Nashville has the dumbest thing in sports this week.
Yes, hi guys. Happy New Year.
To you as well.
Thank you. The dumbest thing in sports is the Titans losing and losing and losing, and we just need to do something about it. Thanks, guys, for taking my call, and I love your show. Keep going, Buck. You're awesome. Great job.
We really appreciate the call, Malika. Thank you. Lucas was too busy taking phone calls to dump that call in time for Malika to pay me a compliment instead of him.
Well, what'd she say?
She said that she hates you and that she loves me.
I don't believe you.
Okay.
Let's go to Doug in Columbia on line 1.
Maybe Doug likes you better. Hey, Doug.
Hey, Buck. How you doing today?
Good.
Hey, mine would be the fiasco from the refereeing in the Dallas Cowboy-Detroit Lion game the other night.
Yeah.
There's got to be a better way to do that situation.
You're 100% correct, Doug, and thank you for the call. So the more that I hear, and we were off radio for a considerable amount of time to go back and talk about a Saturday game by the time we got back in here yesterday. But that decided, or has the ability to decide based on this weekend's results, which of those two teams hosts a playoff game between the two of them. Those are huge consequences to have that just kind of flippantly decided because Brad Allen, the head referee, probably got the numbers mixed up on who was reporting eligible. And in the Lions' efforts to confuse the Cowboys on defense, also confused the referees. The Lions kind of played themselves because they're too smart for their own good. All the details on that are about how meticulous the process is for these detail-oriented freaks that are head coaches to go through with the referees. Hey, we're going to run these plays before this game. This is something that you are going to have to be aware of so that everybody's on the same page, so that when we come out in this formation, you understand what we're trying to do. That's a part of the process for every coach. Now, I don't know Dan Campbell very well. I don't know Dan Campbell at all. Everything that I have heard people say about Dan Campbell in the league is that he is incredibly detail-oriented. That he would have had these guys, he and Ben Johnson, who is being talked about as a head coach candidate, was being talked about as a head coaching candidate last year and will be in all likelihood in this year's cycle, that they would not have appropriately prepared themselves, the players, and the officiating crew for that particular formation, and that the ref is just kind of sloughing it off and kind of talking himself into a circle afterwards. This Brad Allen thing is terrible. It's hard for me to find. If not for David Tepper, it would be the dumbest thing in sports this week. The David Tepper thing is hideous. Philip in Hendersonville is next.
Hey, Buck. So I got two. One is for myself for being an hour late on the last contest when I came up with the Tampax Bowl.
Oh.
And the second one is the Grambling women's college basketball game where they beat the College of Biblical Studies 159-18.
No.
I saw that. The College of Biblical Studies. That was brutal.
Thank you for the call, Philip.
I can't remember who it was on social media, on Twitter, that like the halftime score was posted by Grambling's Twitter account, and they were like, College Biblical Studies always been a second half team. Just feels mean.
In the middle of that, am I allowed to, because you're going to find me for saying who texted me about Mike. I literally just got a text from a friend at Fox Sports that says, Vrabel is staying in Tennessee, right, off the record. I'm not going to say who texted me. But, like, can we not? Can we not with this? I'm so tired.
It's starting to come just sort of from all sides, right? But none of it is concrete, right? Like,
if you gave me credible reporting on it, rather than just saying casually on the internet, there's a rift, then I'm willing to go along with it, because I have also heard plenty of things about this situation. But the fact that nobody is willing to either go out there and do the reporting correctly to make sure that it's vetted in a way that would clarify what exactly said nebulous rift between Mike Vrabel and his general manager is, because we've all heard stuff, but it's just hearsay. It's so irresponsible. And maybe this happens in a lot of other markets, and this is the first time that we've been through it under Mike Vrabel, because this is the first time Mike Vrabel's been through something like this. So I don't know.
Okay, I mean, should we parse through who has said what?
All right.
Credibly.
Well, those are
credible people. Credible people. Dan Graziano
and Jeremy Fowler are the only two people in this conversation and Diana Rossini, excluding ourselves and what we've talked about here, because, I'm not just that to say that we have been consistent in what we've been hearing and what we've talked about and what we've been comfortable, putting out there against what other credible people have also reported to this effect, whether it's Diana, who said that the Titans ownership group has zero interest in firing Mike Vrabel, Fowler and Graziano, who are saying people in the league, which just means people around the NFL are starting to wonder if Mike Vrabel's happy with his situation. And there's plenty of reasons why Mike Vrabel wouldn't be happy with his situation. Who the hell is happy at 5-11? Did you hear that man yesterday? Of course he's not happy. All it takes is one draft class to get it right, get this thing back on track, and then, what, are we going to be talking about Mike Vrabel to the Patriots in 2025? Probably not.
Okay, you tell me your reaction to this from Dan Graziano.
Okay.
When the question posed to him is, a lot of people league-wide starting to wonder about Vrabel's future. Does he want to change? Or would the Titans ask him to make staff changes he doesn't want to make? Would the Titans entertain a trade to New England or someone else? He said, that one is always sort of out there in the ether. I don't have any hard intel on it, but there are people who speculate that Vrabel could at some point want to try it somewhere else. He was in Foxborough earlier this season, inducted into the Hall of Fame. If the New England job does come open, and if it doesn't go to presumed successor Gerard Mayo, a lot of people are going to want to connect Vrabel with that job. Graziano says, I'm with you. I don't think Tennessee has any intention of letting him go. But if hypothetically he went to the Titans and said he wanted to go, yeah, I could see them working out a trade. What's the most concrete thing in there?
That he's not going anywhere. That the Titans don't want to move on from him. That's the most concrete thing in there, which is the thing that all of us have been saying. Anybody who's paying attention to the situation and actually talking to people connected to the situation, all the messaging. Now, if he says, and like to date, that hasn't happened. Graziano just called it in a hypothetical world. So, yeah, if Mike Vrabel went to Amy and said, yeah, I don't want to be here anymore, would she try and probably salvage the situation based on a trade? Sure, in that hypothetical world that does not yet exist. But, like, people are trying to get too far ahead with this thing. It hasn't happened yet, so why are we acting like it has? I mean, whether it's just the TMZ elements of this that are interesting to people, and that's fine, it can be that. But also, it's our jobs and Dan's job, who's doing a good job of kind of tempering that, being like, yeah, sure, there's a hypothetical world that exists.
Timmy on the F&M Bank chat says this wouldn't be coming up so much if there wasn't something there with the smoke emoji.
Oh, yeah. No, there's listen, it's not an ideal situation. Things are weird. We've talked about this plenty of different times, even down to the teach tape thing, right? Where Tehran puts out that article about Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel. It looks like a response to the Greg Bedard stuff. It's not. ESPN just held the report in a way that made Tehran's look like a response and put them in a weird spot. Then with some examples that are cited in that article, specifically Rand Carthon putting together teach tapes for some people on the staff to go back and look through the way that he did in San Francisco, the way that he was taught to in San Francisco, We talked about it here on air. I had people in the organization pushing back on the idea that, one, those things existed, and two, if they do, there's not everybody that has access to them that should probably have access to these things. Long story short, it's a cluster. Football teams are messy at 11-5. This one's 5-11, so the messiness is more interesting than how bad they are on the football field. It was described to me as palace intrigue. What's going on inside the building? Because it's more interesting than what's going on the field. Dysfunction is in every NFL organization. It doesn't mean that these two people and we don't even know how far apart they are. They may not even be that far apart. It's just more interesting to talk about it that way for a lot of people from the outside in other markets who are looking around at their uninteresting coaching situations being like, yeah, that Mike Vrabel guy, he's interesting. Look at that. People are asking him what he thinks about losing, and he's losing his mind. Now he's just being Mike Vrabel.
Well,
So
the collaboration setup is going to lead to speculation on every draft pick, every free agency acquisition, every trade, on who's calling the shots. Is it really 50-50? Is it more Vrabel? Is it more Carthon? The way that they have this thing set up publicly is going to lead to that in every single instance, and people are just going to feast on it.
they're messy. There's no disputing. They are in a mess of their own making. How they set this org chart up is their problem. Like, that they don't want to put defined roles on it or say exactly how much of the personnel decisions each person in this marriage are responsible for is absolutely their own mess. So it leaves them open to this kind of speculation. And they don't care, and Mike Vrabel's not going to answer questions about it, and Rand Carthon doesn't speak enough to answer questions about it. And by the time we get to, what is it going to be, Senior Bowl the next time that we talk to Rand, maybe at season's end, John Robinson talked to the media way more than the average general manager does. That Rand Carthon is not a front-facing person in this exchange. It's not abnormal. It's just that John's situation was more abnormal. He was more out there, more willing to talk to people, whether that worked to his advantage or not.
How many times this season do you think we would have heard from J-Rob? Just given the events of the season. Let's say John Robinson is the general manager of the Tennessee Titans still, and the season played out the exact same, the Byard trade, everything that happened.
Byard for sure.
We would have heard. He would have stepped up and talked
Absolutely
immediately after the Byard trade.
I bet he would have talked I don't want to say more than once, but once for sure. Once for sure. Now, like, he would get on Zoom calls with us when they cut Vic Beasley and Jonathan Joseph. He got up in front of us after they, with the whole Kevin Dodd situation, Rashard Matthews, like any kind of personnel decision that they made, and he read everything. So, like, I think he was a little hypersensitive to this stuff. Again, I don't know if it worked to his benefit. I don't know if it worked to his detriment. I just know that John Robinson was more out there than the average GM. And that was his decision, not the decision of the organization, that John felt like he wanted to talk. And so I don't know if those decisions are being made for Rand, if Rand is making those decisions himself. All I know is that he doesn't have to talk to us other than the league-mandated times, which is Senior Bowl, Combine, free agency, pre-draft, those kind of things. Cam in Nashville is next. Hey, Cam.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, sorry. It's Tim. Yeah, so...
Damn it, Lucas.
What are you going to do?
Okay.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so I'll give you a brief little story. The other day, I was with my 7-year-old daughter, and she doesn't know anything about football except for the fact that I love the Titans. She knows nothing about the game or how it works, but when I was watching the game the other day and she was downstairs eating lunch and she said, the Titans are losing again, I said, well, that's okay. It's a good thing, actually. It took me about 20 seconds to explain to a 7-year-old little girl that it's a good thing that the Titans are losing because it'll help us next year. And I think it's the dumbest thing in sports that it took me 20 seconds to explain that to a 7-year-old, and we've still got grown adults out here that don't understand why it's a good thing that the Titans are losing all these games, and we should have been losing all these games from the start because we suck.
Well, I'm one of those grown adults that didn't think you should be losing from the start. So count your 7-year-old smarter than me.
We should have been losing all these games from the start because we suck.
Now, he's trying to submit that as the dumbest thing in sports this week, but I think that call may have been that call's a pretty good nominee And it's not about his daughter. Buddy.
Well, he's saying
you want to be losing games from the start, and that's why it's the dumbest thing in sports this week that people don't understand
what
that.
he's calling the dumbest thing in sports are people that can't grasp more losses equals better draft pick.
Sure. I get that.
Yeah,
now,
and he is within his rights to want a better draft pick.
Oh, yeah, sure. On January the 3rd, listen, you can be right, but you had me until you went to from the start of the season because we suck. Well, you didn't know that you sucked then. Well, yeah, stupid to wish away any football season is, I think, a crime. Crime. Even if this one, we are now at the point where, sure, we're wishing away football seasons.
I think the people that go into the season saying that nothing's going to happen this year, I just hope we get a good draft pick, and then you go 5-11, 5-12, or whatever, and then they come back around and say, "See, I told you we should have been losing all those games." It's not it's not the flex you think it is.
No, it's why. What are you even doing? Paying attention to this stuff if that's how miserable you are to start the football season.
What are we doing? If that's it, if that's all we're looking for is to lose games for draft picks, why are we even here?
You feel good about any of these nominees so far?
Let's try JT in Nashville.
All right, JT, we'll see if we can salvage it.
Yes, sir.
What's up?
Hello. Hey, guys. The dumbest thing in sports is I can't just say it, man, that the Alabama fans just can't admit that Michigan beat them. Michigan had a better defense. Yeah, Alabama played Alabama ball, but everybody expected Alabama to roll over Michigan. All I want to say is Big Blue, go Big Blue, and rename the show to Buck and the Boys. Thank you so much, fellas. Bye.
No, it's in my contract. It has to be called the Buck Rising Show. I refuse. We can't give you that. But what? What's finable about that?
Yeah, it's just a finable phrase.
Well, that's because you're bitter. Now I say it's funny. We actually talked about doing this, and Lucas was like, "No, I don't care."
About what?
About
the name of the show?
Or are you renaming the show? Yeah. So, given that you are a good percentage of the show at this point, that the show probably should be called something else. But to keep me happy, Lucas satisfied my ego and said, "No, I don't care.
I don't care about the name of the show, but Buck and the Boys has a ring to it."
I don't know. Isn't that Lawan's whole thing? Would I not just be parroting Bussin' with the Boys at that point?
That's true. You would be.
There's too many boys. And that, by the way, they're not even original. They stole that from Big Cat and them. Isn't that the whole Barstool flag thing? Isn't that their original merch stuff for the boys? Saturdays are for the boys? None of it's original. Anyway. We're going to talk about Kirby Smart and how he demands that college football be fixed. Lucas will determine who wins the Feed Your Flock package, courtesy of Hattie B's. More of your phone calls. I'm Buck Rising, 1045 The Zone. So we got to get to this Kirby Smart audio. It's compelling stuff. It also sounds very, very serious based on Kirby's tone. We'll do that here in just a second. Apparently, Leo in Franklin has something FSU related, correct? All right. What's up, Leo?
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Buck. Dumbest thing in sports, I've kind of got a split personality thing going on. The dumbest thing in sports to me is either that Georgia wasn't in the Final Four or that Florida State thinks they belonged in the Final Four. And I'm sorry they got their quarterback hurt, but we listened for a month from the Florida State contingent talking about how they should have been there, how they deserved to be there. And I think it was clear with their game against Georgia just how far off they were without their best quarterback, without their best player playing. And everybody could see it but them. And what would it have looked like if they had been in that Final Four? I think Georgia showed us. So the dumbest thing in sports to me got to be Florida State, but sort of a co-mention because how dumb is it that Georgia somehow wasn't in the Final Four?
Yeah.
Thanks for taking my call, Buck.
Thank you for the call, Leo. All right, so let's hear from Kirby Smart because Georgia wins 63-3, and it is just an unbelievably lopsided thing from the jump, right? They have the opportunity to go up 42-0 at the half. I believe there's a fumble recovery that puts them in position to go up 42-0 at the half. Kirby Smart throws it 4 straight times. And by the way, Beck did not play. Carson Beck did not play in the second half of the game, so it's not like Kirby Smart kept, no pun intended, but like kept the dogs off the leash type of thing. Like he reeled it back in the second half. And I want to play this Kirby Smart audio because for a variety of different reasons. Anyway, here's Kirby Smart post-game talking about why college football needs to do something about what happened between Georgia and Florida State.
People need to see what happened tonight, and they need to fix this. It needs to be fixed. It's very unfortunate that they, who has a good football team and a good football program, are in the position they're in. And everybody can say it's their fault and it's all their own problem. All right? And everybody can say that we had our guys and they didn't have their guys. I can listen to all that. But college football has got to decide what they want. And I know things are changing. And I think things are going to change next year. And you know what? There's going to still be bowl games outside of those. People got to decide what they want and what they really want to get out of it. Because it's really unfortunate for those kids on that sideline that had to play in that game that didn't have their full arsenal. And it affected the game 100%.
All right. First and foremost, he sounds like somebody got shot in front of him. People need to see this.
He took no satisfaction in that win.
Sure. There's nothing satisfying about just beating the holy hell out of a team that had 27 opt-outs. You know who else had 27 opt-outs in that game? Georgia. There were a ton of opt-outs for Georgia in that game.
Name them.
I don't know all the names of all the players, Lucas. I'm just looking at I'm just looking at the write-ups afterwards. But Georgia has a ton of opt-outs in that game for all the reasons that Georgia would, because a lot of guys are going pro. Now, they had their quarterback. They had more of their parts and pieces. Brock Bowers officially declared, yesterday?
No, Bowers did not play.
Right, but I'm saying that he officially declared for the draft yesterday. He had not declared prior to the bowl game, even though we all knew he wasn't going to play in the bowl game.
But a lot of the players that made Georgia's season played in that. Like 20, did you say 27 opt-outs for Georgia?
I'm being hypothetical. I was
going to say,
what's the word? Not hypothetical.
Brock Bowers, significant, opted out, but Kendall Milton played, Dejan Edwards played, Dylan Bell played, Ladd McConkey, Dominic Lovick.
It is an extreme
quarterback played,
number of
Kamari Lassiter. Like most of their star players played.
It's an extreme number of players that opted out for Florida State. I'm just saying it's not as uneven as I think it's being made out to be.
I think it is.
Georgia, what?
I think it is.
That you think this is...
The core of Georgia's team played. Kamari Lassiter, the core of Georgia's team played. Florida State was a complete shell of itself. That Georgia team that I watched against FSU is pretty much the Georgia team I watched smoke Tennessee at Neyland. Just Brock Bowers was the most significant omission, and he rightfully opted out.
No, but I 100% am on the same page as that caller. It's a shell of Florida State, and Florida State maybe it's not 63-3 or whatever the final ended up being, but it's still going to be a lopsided result because Georgia is infinitely... Would Georgia not be favored against either team remaining in the national title?
Probably. Yeah.
So, to his point, the dumbest thing in sports this week is the best team in the country probably being left out of the college football playoff. Now, what you have to do is beat an Alabama team that beat you. Okay? So, your fate was in your hands, and you blew it. But Georgia would be favored on a neutral field at Houston. Georgia would be favored against Michigan. Georgia would be favored against Washington. I would imagine that if Alabama and Georgia played again, had both made it into the Final Four, and I don't think there was a maneuver that would have both in the Final Four, but if they were both in it again and played again, Georgia would probably be favored against Alabama and Texas. So it's not as big a thing. Now, I heard, and I know Tennessee fans have mixed feelings about Pat Forty at Sports Illustrated, but Pat Forty, I thought, articulated this very well because he almost accused the roster at Florida State as lacking character, when in reality, and I think he was a little too strident in what he was trying to say, but that team, based on the number of opt-outs, was constructed with the idea that we're going all in to win a national title, and since we did not accomplish the goal of the national title, that we are not playing for anything, beyond that. Right now it's about the players who are left, whether it's transferring to other places that are going to give them an opportunity to compete for another title or something else. Like, it's fair to say that Florida State, the players that opted out of that game, were playing less for Florida State than they were for themselves. Yes? That's a fair assessment.
Sure.
And listen, tough not to be, because the entire college football country said, yeah, we know that we just told you that everything that you accomplished this season doesn't matter, but also still take it seriously. So I'm not mad at that idea, but I do think that's a fair characterization. Georgia went out there clearly with something to prove. Florida State had a different approach. The roster understandably looked around and said, okay, for what? What are we talking about here?
I mean, Kirby had a bit in that same presser after the Orange Bowl where he's talking about Kamari Lassiter, going to be an NFL. We had him on the show. We had him on at SEC Media Days. Georgia cornerback. The conversations he had with Kamari and Kamari's mom before the game, where Kirby saying, you have done your duty for Georgia. Whatever you decide, I am not going to be disappointed. And he told him, Kamari, I don't think it's worth it for you to play in this game. Like, totally honestly. And he said he sat down with Kamari and his mom, and then it seemed like the decision was he's not going to play in the Orange Bowl. And then Kamari Lassiter called him 2 days later and said, Coach, I can't do it. I can't just sit here at practice and watch these guys. I got to be out there. And that happened a lot throughout Georgia's roster. So it's a credit to Kirby and to Georgia football with their circumstances of national championship or bust, looking for the three-peat, not getting there, and still having not a full arsenal, but close to it, where Florida State was the complete opposite. But that game was the most glaring. That bowl game was obviously hurt, devastated by opt-outs. Keon Coleman, it's not just Jordan Travis being hurt. Keon Coleman opted out. Jared Verse opted out. All of Florida State's best players did not play in that game. And they have their third-string quarterbacks, their backups in the portal. Outside of the Orange Bowl, bowl season was not that affected by opt-outs and transfers. It just wasn't.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because on every broadcast, I felt like people were complaining about how opt-outs were impacting bowl season. And also, like, just in casual conversation with people who want to talk and who, come up and talk to us about sports, whether those are friends of ours or people that listen to the show and things like that. Like, I got a lot of feedback on, this bowl season's unwatchable, isn't it? And I'm like, no, I mean,
all the time.
I'm watching this, and maybe it's because I'm covering a 5-win football team that I'm saying, all right, I don't need to, I don't need more Jets against Joe Flacco in my life. I'll turn on the Pop-Tarts Bowl, because that's the mode that I'm in right now. I was not as struck by the opt-outs, other than, like, there's some notable quarterbacks that opted out. Those are big differences, and those probably make the biggest difference on how competitive these teams are from game to game. But for the most part, like, you mentioned LSU. LSU's roster pretty much intact, other than the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, because he's probably going to be a first-round pick.
So Jay on the F&M Bank chat says bowl games are a joke due to opt-outs. So let's go through which bowl games were a joke due to transfers or opt-outs this year. Obviously, the Orange Bowl.
I'm willing to say the Orange Bowl.
It was terrible. People paid to travel to that game, for tickets to that game. That was an abomination. Okay, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State. Absolutely. Jimbo Fisher fired, half of A&M's roster in the portal, coaching change. A&M was a shell of itself. Oklahoma State wins. Outside of that, I guess the Mayo Bowl, because Drake May didn't play, and West Virginia beats North Carolina. Missouri, Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't play. Nobody that watched that game is going to look at you and say that wasn't meaningful. It was a good game until the fourth quarter where Missouri scored. It's a defensive slugfest. It meant a lot to Missouri. Like you said, LSU, Wisconsin was electric. Garrett Nussmeier threw for almost 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Caleb Williams doesn't play in the Holiday Bowl, and Miller Moss comes in, a name nobody's ever heard of, and slings 6 touchdowns as USC beats Louisville in a shootout. So outside of Georgia, Florida State, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State, and throw in the Mayo Bowl if you want, every other bowl game was awesome television. If there was a guy opting out, there was another guy like a Nico, like a Jackson Arnold for Oklahoma.
That provided the intrigue that made you want to watch more.
Exactly.
I wanted to watch the Citrus Bowl more because Milton wasn't playing.
Exactly. So I do think it's overblown. Georgia, Florida State was an awful example, but overall the product was really, really good this bowl season.
Because the thing about it is, like, I'm not going to accuse the person. You said that was somebody in the chat. For some reason, the chat on my end isn't working. But I'm not going to accuse that person of not watching all the bowls. One, because you don't have to unless you're gambling, and okay, that's fine. But two, I think it's easy to get caught up in a conversation that's being had on social media or something like that without the actual context of what it is that you're talking about. And maybe you see the most extreme examples of that, because what was the most extreme example of that? The game that we just talked about between Georgia and Florida State. But that's the one. Like, that's, I mean, you mentioned A&M.
Sure.
But
okay, in a year from now, what happens with that game?
What?
Georgia, Florida State. It's a playoff game.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
They're playing for a national championship.
And those players stay in, like,
same with Ohio State and Missouri.
For the people who were bemoaning opt-outs impacted, because again, I think that television broadcasters were guilty of this because it was a talking point everywhere on any bowl game that you turned on. But to the point of some, and I don't know who was calling. I think it was Osweiler that was calling the game on ABC, right?
Yeah, for the Tennessee game. Yeah.
He made the point about, well, no, this is actually a good thing. In a lot of places, I could understand how it would be bad. You're trying to motivate guys to stay in it, and the expanded playoff is going to do that. So problem already solved next year. There's going to be this hand-wringing. But, like, it is as important, if you actually care about these football teams in the next season, to watch Nico Iamaleava or watch Garrett Nussmeier or some of these guys who are playing that would not have gotten snaps during the regular season because there's no reason for them to.
Well, and everybody wants to talk about how to fix college football, and the first thing people say is move the portal. You can't have the portal opening early December, and coaches have to work through that. That's more complicated because players, whether how much you think student-athlete, quote-unquote, is a sham or not, players have to enroll in their next school. So you can't make the portal open January 8th. You just can't. You can move the early signing period. There could be financial NIL incentives. Let some of those guys get that Pop-Tart money. But there are things that can be done. But it's not as big of an issue, I think, as people make it out to be.
All anybody can talk about outside of Nashville is Mike Vrabel's job status. Well, his press conference coming up next. We'll see if he's asked.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios as the Titans head towards the regular season finale Sunday, hosting Jacksonville. Mike Vrabel, currently at the podium, has stated that rookie quarterback Will Levis will not practice today as his foot is evaluated throughout the course of the week. Vrabel meeting with the media. Levis will meet with the media coming up in the noon hour. You can hear it live right here in just a few moments. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Mike Vrabel's at the podium. Will Levis is not expected to practice. Also an apology for some colorful language yesterday. That's about the gist. We go live to St. Thomas Sports Park.
It's like pitching. I watch a lot of guys pitch. Carter plays baseball. So I always try to equate some of that stuff that I see, whether that's a pass rusher or a DB, a wide receiver, or in your question, an offensive lineman, is what different pitch can you throw? And you can't get guys out throwing 86 anymore, so you're going to have to, be able to throw different pitches. And, if a pass rusher has some speed to power, or they, use a certain move, a freeze move, a long arm, whatever that may be, you have to be able to change things up. And I think that's always a way. When you're in, by knowing your opponent and knowing what they do, and how you can kind of, whether you short set them, flash hands, just all the different techniques that we talk about.
How do you think you guys have done it kind of?
Well, none of us. Starting with me, you can ask me how we've done. None of us have done well enough throughout the season, and that's why we continue to practice and continue to work. I think sometimes in the game, you practice and you have to be able to see that in live reps and have that translate. That's why that's so critical to having those small victories and improvement that we talked about yesterday, and developing players and developing units. It's a much different pace. In practice, it's a different player doing it in practice that you're going against. So, you have to be able to do some of those things. That has to translate to the game. And once you can do that, then you can start to understand, okay, this is how I have to approach it. This is the technique I need to use. This is the change up off of that.
Talking about just with the change-ups, are they something that you give the guys a roadmap for? If they do this, you do that, or is it kind of up to the individual?
No, that's what we do every day, is trying to find answers and put yourself in a position of coaching. Put yourself in how, if I had to do that job, how would I go about doing it? There's some jobs out there that I haven't done personally, and a lot of the coaches haven't either. That's not to say that they don't know, but you study and you watch, and you have to be able to say, okay, if this is what they're doing, here are answers, here are tools in a toolbox. Great resource is guys around the league. Guys around the league. That's why we try to comb through, all that tape between Stretch and I, to try to find examples of those. Just to validate the things that we're talking about, or that were, maybe they're new ideas.
What have you seen from Otis Reese in his little trial at inside linebacker here lately?
Yeah, see some speed, see some violence, and improvement. And so, I know we talked about the play, him tracking it the other day, and he was much, very active in the plays and the snaps that he had, and hopefully continue to add to that and make sure that he's, improving on special teams too. It's a critical role for him. But I would say that Otis's attitude, his willingness, and certainly his effort has been good.
You got an extended work, I guess, from Kayvon Wallace too recently. How's he kind of fit in to the defense?
Good.
we've
And he,
seen?
he wanted to really worked hard to get back last week. After missing the week, and we got Kayvon in towards the back half of the season. He came in, studied hard, and took advantage of his opportunity. Talked about the play that he made just on sheer effort in Miami that led to us stopping them short of the goal line and then them turning the ball over on the very next play. So saw that last week against Dallas and Miami as well. Miami made a great stop and the ball was almost over the goal line, and that's why we talk about every inch matters. And Dallas turned the ball over the very next play. So that was something that Kayvon that stood out for me, and he'll have to just continue to progress and work. But I've liked the way that he's come in and taken advantage of his opportunity and played for us.
Like when quarterbacks get pressured or hit, like you guys have had a lot this year, do you see it, a level of expectation coming in for quarterbacks to almost expect to be pressured? And does that affect them if that is the case?
I think playing the position, I would imagine there's got to be a level of understanding. You have to have some courage to be able to sit into the pocket. You also have to be able to slide away and do their part. Sometimes there's nothing that they can reasonably do, but then there's also times where guys, quarterbacks can help some of that, just like in a running game. There's times where you can't block them all, and guys make people miss or break tackles, and that's how it goes, and that's what it looks like. And sometimes you get them blocked and they're untouched for 8 or 10 yards, and that's great too.
You think Harold's the same guy Harold was before the ACL now?
I just really like where Harold's at, just from maturity and his consistency, his daily approach. So plays extremely hard. He does a lot of different things for us. I think that he's really factored, and I think starting to feel better, cutting it loose, and happy for whatever personal success that he has, or making a bunch of plays and helping us out.
The patience you have to show, waiting, like knowing it's probably going to get back to normal, but there's got to be some doubt, while you're waiting.
Well, I think that would be for the individual. I don't, I never had a knee surgery or an ACL. Yeah, you're always coaching and talking through and showing them that you can, like, here's this movement, and so I think that he's like I said, just been able to cut it loose and get going. And again, him and Crow have worked extremely hard, and we see him always working and focusing on things and having different change-ups that he can use to help him do his job.
Mike, you mentioned, sorry. Mike,
that's okay.
Mike, you mentioned.
He just was a little louder than me.
Hey, we gotta get it in. Mike, you mentioned a couple weeks ago about not relishing being a spoiler. What does that mean to you, and how do you relate that to your team?
Well, no, we want to finish strong. We can finish this thing the right way. We can finish it, with a lot of class, and we can also, get a huge win, and also, potentially, I think it would just be critical to get a home win here to finish the season in the division against a team that kept us from the playoffs last year. So that's what we're trying to do. Our guys are trying to get ready, starting that process here this morning, and that'll carry all the way up until the game.
These last few games of the season have been a lot about getting some of these younger guys this trial period and giving them opportunities in games. What does Kyle Phillips need to do to be one of those guys getting that opportunity, or is there something he can do at this point?
Yeah, you only have so much room for, you can look at the reasons why Kyle wasn't. Kyle, only so many room for a slot receiver that doesn't catch punts, and that's where we went to. So I'm hopeful that Kyle will be in there this week and will help us, but that's just once you start looking at the job that they do on game day and how many snaps. Kyle hasn't done anything from a receiver. He helped us in the 2-minute and third down. It's just how each week, how do you get the guys that you need to cover kicks and punts. And if we kick touchbacks every time, me and all of us could cover the kickoff, and we don't. So we have to have guys that we feel like can cover the kick, and that's what it is.
You've kept 6 some weeks in the past and 5 other weeks. Is that matchup based, kind of whether or not you have that 6th receiver up?
Well, it was when Colton was, at times, turned himself into a above average. I'm not going to say great, but a good. He was a starting gunner for us. Made some plays in that regard. So those are things that you factor in. How many guys are you going to take for special teams, and how many? What role is a guy going to have on offense or defense? How many positions? Where do you feel like there's a backup? You got a pair and a spare, and if this guy goes down, then who's the next person in the game? Where do you move this guy? Those are all just things that factor into it.
I want to clarify too. You said there briefly he hasn't done anything from the receiving.
I meant negatively. It wasn't. It was just we changed punt returners, and so when that happened, then those are part of the decisions of who's going to the game. But my point is when Kyle played and did a nice job on 2-minute, and the quarterback found him and made some good catches for us, and but based on different personnels and what we're asking those guys to do. Nick Westbrook was just doing some of those jobs, and 11 personnel, just different reasons as we come. So hopeful that Kyle will get another opportunity to help us this week.
When it comes to Traylon Burks and just the continued development of him, how hard is it, Coach? You played the game. To continue that momentum of your own game if you are not on the field, like how much does that actually play into it in terms of building game after game? And obviously he's not been able to do that.
Well, he has the last couple weeks, So again, that's all we can focus on. Is we're hopeful to have him this week and continue to help us, and confident that the play that he didn't come down with last week that he'll come down with this week, and hopefully more. I think just consistency. You see him go in there and make a really nice block on a safety, and we gain a bunch of yards, and then the safety's not going to just stand in there and let him hit him, so he kind of spins and misses him, and so he's in the hole. So, but I think to your question, I think it is very important to be able to string those chances together. It's very hard at this point in the season to replicate a whole lot of speed and some of that stuff. And so, the game action is critical, and then the game within the game, and how do you respond? What are they doing? What are the adjustments? What do you have to do better the next series, or if you get the same look, not making the same mistake twice, or having an idea of our coverage and all those different things.
Mike, there's been a lot of, stuff on social media, reports from outside that say, talk about your relationship with Rand, your, perceived unhappiness or whatever here. Do you have to address those types of things with the players? Because most players are on social media and whatnot today.
No, I don't. I don't, because, again, if we believed everything that was on social media, it'd be Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, and there's no tooth fairy and all that. So I really have never responded to any of those, and we're not going to start now. I know where we're at as an organization. I'm excited to build this thing and to fix this thing and get it to where we want it to be, to win championships with Rand and Chad and A-Rob and a coaching staff and everybody. I mean, that's what our goal is. So, but no, the social media and where that is, and I can't focus on that.
So you want to be here next year?
Of course I want to be here. Be here as long as we can win and long as we can, do this thing. And it's been great, but it also has been, just frustrating this year. Nobody wants to be where we're at. You feel, for the players, having been in that situation, those guys are out there selling out, and you feel for them when you look out there on the field, and we're not winning, or it's pretty obvious. But the one thing that allows me to at least sleep at night is when the games, we had a clunker in Jacksonville and in Houston, and we're out there, fighting, not letting them run through us, for 40, 50 yards and all that. And I know that there's no moral victories, and that's not a moral victory, but it's just a lot of times in those situations, you can just pack it up and pack it in, and so that's that was last week. This week we have to be in a different situation. Talked about the ability to put ourselves in that competitive situation, where the game has some flow to it, and you make a play, you get a turnover, right? You pin them down, and you start playing complementary. So talk to the team again, about that, and about eliminating, some of the mistakes, that are just, that come at critical times, and that make it tough to overcome. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Will Levis next. Will Levis is up at the podium. He's not practicing today. We're not sure if he's going to play on Sunday, but here's the Titans starting quarterback.
You've done as far as improving, being able to survey the defense and pick what's there when the first or second guy's not open?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done a decent job. Definitely got to get better. Like, just even as recently as this past game, like the first third down that we missed where it almost got picked off, like I'd felt like what I'd seen didn't really match up with what actually happened, where I had an opportunity to throw a ball on time to a ball I knew I could throw to Traylon on the outbreaker there, where I thought we could just get the first by taking the check down. But that's not necessarily third or fourth read, but that's just an example of me not necessarily seeing and feeling and executing in that sort of situation.
Those things you can only learn by doing, really?
No, I mean, you try to get better and watch and learn from that, but I think getting out there and getting a rep of doing it the right way definitely gives you more confidence and makes it easier to do the next time when it happens, at least.
You kind of talked about the annoying of having to deal with some of this stuff. If you don't play, you feel like you have done a lot of things this year in your rookie season that make you feel good about things moving forward?
Yeah, no, I definitely there's some good stuff all over the tape, I think, but you got to look at the good and the bad and understand how much better the good can get and how we can change the good to become bad. So I think that there's good examples across the tape of our whole offense and our ability to execute, but just the inconsistency of it, for myself included, obviously, has just been annoying. So, we got to make sure that we just have that sense of, completion or just putting it all together this offseason and being able to, get off on the right foot next year.
How frustrating and maybe annoying is it that you guys haven't been able to get an AFC South win? And it's one thing to go into the season with a win, but especially maybe one that matters so much in terms of just the division.
Yeah, no, I mean, these games mean a lot, and I feel like every division game we've played, those have been our most physical games. And we like to have the mentality, and we like to think that we're the type of teams that thrive in those environments, and, just haven't come together for us this year, which is frustrating. But they're important games, obviously. We need to get at least one. So, I mean, hopefully we can get this one here this last weekend.
How quickly have you developed, I guess, a sense of rivalry within the division? Like, fans here don't like their division opponents, players who have played here a while. But as a rookie, how quickly do you realize it means more when it's Jacksonville, Indy, or Houston on the other side?
Yeah, no, I think you get there. I don't really, see what the Discord on, social or whatever, how the fans interact in that way. But you know when you get there, when you get to the stadium, I'd say maybe fans are a little nicer than in college, but there's still that sense of inclusion with their fan base and how much they really care and where their hearts are connected with their team. So I mean, that's just what makes sports great. I embrace that. I think we all love that, and we all like when there's that uptick of energy when those situations come into play.
Is there an opposing fan base in particular in college that was unkind?
I mean, SEC especially, everyone is very, very deep-rooted in their faith with their team. So if you're not with them, you're against them. But no, there's definitely some teams that had, I'd say stronger words or stronger opinions. I know you guys are wanting me to say one, but yeah, I can't really say anything about them because they got the best of me my 2 years there. But yeah, no, that's what's great about sports, and I love that. I embrace it for sure.
Have you had some people? Have you encountered some people during your time here that maybe admitted that they didn't like you before, that maybe have grown to like you here?
Yeah, or even people that still don't like me, but. But yeah, I mean, you got to respect it. If someone, if you're a Vol fan and you don't like me simply because you're a Vol fan, you better stay on that hill. You don't change, don't switch up now. But no, I mean, I'm opening all fans of us or of the Titans with open arms, and hopefully, at least since I got drafted, maybe I've been able to change some people's opinions.
Unusual, Will, to think that possibly this is the last game as Titans for both Ryan and Derek this week. Not certain, but
yeah, I mean, I can't wonder what's going through their minds and the decisions or everything that's going to happen in the offseason. I'm not making those decisions, but having to sit back and even just experience some of it throughout the season with the people that we've added and the guys that we've had to let go, it's eye-opening as a rookie to see that and just how constant the change is at this level. And there's obviously going to be some turnover this year in this offseason, and if it includes guys like that, that's crazy to think about for our team and for our fan base. But it's part of the game, and all they can do is go out there and just play their hearts out.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Will.
Sound familiar, Lucas?
What's that?
I
What, the Tooth Fairy thing?
Yeah. How about that? Mike Vrabel taking out every mythical creature or figure in childhood lore, just ending everybody's childhood, not ignorance, just lifting the veil.
Is it time to slap a parental advisory sticker on Mike Vrabel press conferences? Like,
for a great many reasons.
Our little thumbnail on 104.5 The Zone TV when we go to those pressers. I'm thinking about putting in one of those parental advisory tags that you see on explicit albums.
You got so mad at me when I said something about Santa Claus, and Mike Vrabel just took out every one of them. Every
and an
holiday
F-bomb yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Put the parental advisory on it. He's going to have to come back tomorrow and issue a public apology about telling everybody the Tooth Fairy and Santa isn't real. Incredible. Nice try and jazz hands your way away from Will Levis, all but publicly calling you out. You know he's going to come back on this radio show at some point, and you know you're going to have to submit a public apology to him.
I welcome that. I have things to say to Will Levis.
Such as? Because I'm trying to sell the Titans on putting Will Levis on the show in Week 18. If he doesn't play, then it's, they're probably going to say, no, he just talked. You can use that. But we're trying to make this happen before the end of the season because I don't want to have to wait until training camp, although it would be better because we would be in person for you to have to look at him in his face and tell him how much you didn't want him here.
I'm a man that can admit when he's wrong.
That's not true at all. Every time we've done this exercise, you've diverted just as you did just now. Literally 5 seconds ago.
I find it to be one of my biggest strengths.
So, beyond, Will Levis and something from Levis that we didn't quite get to on the air, but a good explanation about how the offensive line situation is kind of impacting his play. We'll do that tomorrow. Mike Vrabel on his job status. You heard him ask the question. Of course, he wants to be here. I don't know if that settles down the internet rumors. There's probably just going to be a bunch of headlines about Mike Vrabel addressing his job status that come out of this. But, I don't know how many more times people have to tell you that he's not going anywhere or that he doesn't want to go anywhere before you start to believe him.
Do you think this calms things at all?
No.
Because it's always one of two things where it's, you see, there you go. Dust has settled on it. And then there's, of course that's what he's going to say.
Somebody's going to accuse him of not being, the easy pivot is, he's lying.
Yeah.
The easy bit. Wait, he doesn't mean anything that he just say. And listen, coaches lie. Coaches lie all the time. If you work in media, at some point in time, a coach has lied to you about something. It's not beyond the pale. So I'm not saying that just because he said everything that he said at the podium is 100% truth 100% of the time. It's just not the case. But if you think that Mike Vrabel's unhappy and you think that Mike Vrabel, like the weirdness in the building, and there is weirdness in the building, full disclosure, he made it sound a lot more copacetic than it is. If you're somebody who believes that's problematic enough for him to force his way out, then you're not changing anybody's opinion. In the year of our Lord 2023, or I guess it's 2024, you're not changing anybody's opinions about anything, no matter how many times you hit him over the head with facts. It's literally, again, election cycle coming up, so that's going to be a part of all of our lives for the foreseeable future. But people don't care about facts anymore. Journalism is dying in front of us. Mike Lombardi is out here reporting that Mike Vrabel's on an expiring deal and just comes back on Twitter 6 hours later after he gets aggregated by everybody under the sun saying, no, I misspoke. He has 2 years left. No, you didn't misspeak. You're just fast and loose with it. Chill. And nobody cares because your attention is distracted by the next thing that you scroll up on your timeline, and that's Jason Lockhanfora saying that Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon have a rift.
They probably have disagreements.
Hell yes.
They probably disagree on some things.
And it hasn't been totally smooth. I know for a fact it has not been totally smooth. That there are some things that Mike Vrabel expects to be done that are, that are a work in progress. It doesn't mean that it's not a correctable situation or that it's all bad. There are things that happen in any working relationship. How long did it take you and I to figure out how the hell to do this? And I'm not even sure.
We?
Yeah, no. But again, to your point, we've been doing this 3 years, just you and I. All right? It's very much a question of whether we do this well or not. So it's all a work in progress all the time. And that there's some friction from time to time is not uncommon. It's just the most normal thing in the world. It's just these people are famous and covered with a tremendous amount of scrutiny. And this one's a pretty colorful character that has connections to a job opening that's inevitably going to come. And that market,
and also Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon.
And also that. Yeah, like, it's weird. There's a lot of weirdness.
Name a head coach in the NFL or head coaches in the NFL that have more say in player personnel than we believe Mike Vrabel to have.
Belichick.
With the Titans. Belichick, yes. Who else? And we're seeing how that, Belichick, that won't be
Belichick,
a
the
thing
GM,
for
is going
long.
to get Belichick, the coach, fired.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting when the Patriots move on from Belichick, what that dynamic looks like. Do they want to do the head coach / GM thing again?
No, I'm sure not. It depends who it is, but probably not.
Like, let's say Gerard Mayo is the successor. They're probably going to hire a general manager.
Yeah. And
Brandon on the FNM Bank chat says Rivera.
He did
Tony
for
says
a period
Tomlin.
of time. I don't know what. You asked me that question, and I don't know specifically, so I don't want to speak out of turn. I know for a while that Rivera had a tremendous amount of personnel control with Washington. I don't know how much that's changed since he's had to make changes to his staff, since he's already calling defense. Like, there's a lot going on with Washington, so that's probably the other example. There's not many coaches that have this situation, but look at the amount of turnover in the league. Sean Payton.
Yes,
it's going to be
100%.
contractually negotiated. Like, Sean Payton knew going into that deal that he was going to be able to nix Russell Wilson if he needed to. Beyond that, there's really not that many. Beyond that, there's not that many other places that have it. And by the way, I don't think there's a situation that's like this one anywhere else in the NFL right now with Rand and Vrabel. I don't think there's another situation that mirrors this at all.
Shanahan could be on that list as well. I don't know what that dynamic is between he and John Lynch.
There's a lot of tiers to the John Lynch-like structure. Like, he has assistant GMs the way that Carthon has here. Like, there's a structure to that. That's something that was learned. That's something that's implemented in San Francisco. There's a lot of pushback on that idea because, all the rumors that swirled around the draft that year, like if Shanahan had had his way, it had been Mac Jones, right? And that was obviously a direction that they did not go. So, I'm not there every day the way that I'm around here every day. So I don't want to speak out of turn. But I would say that this is a particularly unique structure. And there's really not that many coaches in the league that have, earned it. And you can debate whether Mike Vrabel's earned it or not. And then there's the discussion of is there a scenario in which you could leverage this bad situation to gain yet more control if you're Mike Vrabel? I don't think that's out of the question. These people inherently are control freaks. Like, they want to have as much say-so in what's going on in their day-to-day as humanly possible. So I don't think that's beyond the pale. And I don't think it's wrong necessarily for him to push for. Whether it's a good idea or not is debatable, Bill O'Brien. But if I'm Mike Vrabel and I'm looking around and being like, yeah, I want as much control over my situation as humanly possible, then I'm not going to blame him if he's pushing, which is not beyond the pale. Smokescreen Gene is up next. What's happening?
Oh, hello, boys. Got to tell you, the dumbest thing in sports is not the fact that sports are no longer sports and it's the politicking and the smoke screening in the world.
Sure.
It's that it's gotten so egregious that it's easy to spot on which side each journalist is on. I watched after this Titans game, watched Teresa Walker go online on X and have a conversation trying to blame Andre Dillard on J-Rob. It's gotten to the point where the apologists and the people trying to put the leaks in the plants to shield this coaching staff has gotten so bad and so over the top that they've played their hand out. That is by far the dumbest thing in sports, that we have to go through and actually see this day to day.
Well, listen, to act like, and you mentioned Teresa specifically, I don't know the discussion that Teresa engaged in, so I'm not going to be able to speak on that without the context, and I appreciate the call. But to act like that doesn't exist would be disingenuous, of course. And I think it's made worse, Gene, by the environment that the current social media construct has created, where you see a lot of people out there with, hey, somebody's willing to talk to me, and I have the ability to get a scoop over a very, very saturated market. Whether that scoop ends up being thoroughly reported or not, I think blows up in a lot of people's faces, as you've just seen evidence with Mike Lombardi, Greg Bedard, and other people like that, right? Where it's just the first people who are willing to give you a quote on something, whether you've got the context of the other side or have thoroughly done the job or not, is a different question. Now, accusing people of who's in whose pockets and source guessing, I've never enjoyed that. I don't like when people do it to me. I don't think it's fair. Because you really don't know. Unless you actually know, unless you actually have a direct line to the conversation, I don't think it's a fair thing that happens. But I do think it's good for people to be skeptical. Never more so than now. We got more phone calls. We'll get to them. Last call for them. 615-737-1045 is the number.
Tooth Fairy is real, by the way.
Not according to Mike Vrabel. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. That's a pretty good press conference today. Normally, you can kind of go in one ear and out the other with them from time to time, or at least I think fans can. But between Levis and Vrabel, I thought there was a lot that we learned. Mostly that Lucas needs to say sorry. We're going to make this happen one way or the other. Especially, it went so poorly for you the last time, too. Like, that was not your best showing.
No, it was not.
Do you overthink some of those exchanges from time to time?
I think I was in a lose-lose situation.
How's it feel? How's it feel? As somebody who perpetually puts me in lose-lose situations, how does it feel?
Fair. It felt fair.
I don't know what it is. So have you been stewing on this since August? Like, I don't know what your prepared remarks are going to look like when this person finally reemerges on the radio show.
I might get emotional. I don't know.
That will ensure that he'll never come back here ever again.
Who is this person?
I'm so sorry.
0% chance Will Levis remembers me. He's gonna be like, who is this?
No, I think
I do not care about this.
I think you're underestimating just how personal exchange, because he got to look at you in your face as we embarrassed you in real time. You weren't there with me at St. Thomas Sports Park. It was just he and I sitting up there on the terrace, the SeatGeek terrace. But he had a direct view of you on a Zoom call. I don't think you could see him though, right?
I could. Yeah, I could see him. I deflected. I tried to deflect to your Botox.
It didn't work. Nice try again. AJ Parkinson says, "Are you trolling us, Buck? The only thing we learned was the Tooth Fairy and Santa ain't real."
Can we stop? Let's stop with that.
I'm delighted that I'm not the only person who's done that on live radio. That makes me happy. So people are asking in the chat, is Will Levis playing? Just because he speaks doesn't guarantee that he's going to play. He's not practicing today.
Trevor Lawrence, by the way, is day-to-day. So his status also in doubt for Sunday with the shoulder.
A situation to monitor because this is a huge game for the Jags. The Jags absolutely have to win this game on Sunday with Houston on their necks and Indianapolis. Again, we're going to have the conversation about if playing him is the right decision, if he's even available. And right now, day one, last week was different, right? He was a full participant all 3 days. And they may be cautious with him anyway throughout the course of the week and make a determination. All right, maybe Friday, it's a toss-up. Like, that's not determined on Wednesday and the first day of work. But it lends itself to the idea that he's not going to play. There are going to be a lot of people who hold that same opinion. Are you now of that same opinion that he should not play? If they clear him on Friday and Mike Vrabel says he's available to play if we need him to, like in some capacity, whether that's backup or starter, because they've done that before, right? They've dressed guys. They've had guys active, but Dupree, Taylor Lewan, not started them and just said, well, if we absolutely had to go to them, they were there for us. Are you at the point where you're outright ruling Will Levis out that you don't want to see him anymore?
No, not outright. But if his injury is in a place where, let's say hypothetically, the Titans were in a position to get into the postseason, hypothetically, this weekend, and Levis is working through it, and the decision is, okay, it's a must-win game. But let's make it happen, right? Let's do what we got to do to get you out there. If that's the type of situation, I would say then don't. Then don't, because it's not a must-win game. And I understand the live reps are valuable, but the last thing you want is Will Levis having to go into the offseason scheduling a surgery.
Ugh. And it's, I can't tell you that that's not going to happen because the offensive line is hideous and, the worst possible thing that could have happened in the Texans game did happen.
Yeah, and it was very predictable to a lot of people. And rightfully so.
Yeah, I'm struggling with it, right? Because there's a part of me that says it's so antithetical to say to a football player, no, you can't play football this week, if he's able to play football, right? But on the other side of it, I totally acknowledge that your offensive line is not, it's not like just bad. It's an outright liability. The quarterbacks that have played it, save Malik because he didn't play a ton. He played in, the fourth quarter of the London game, basically?
Yes, that's it.
And it's not like Levis got a ton of time before he got injured behind this line. So Malik is the only one who hasn't sustained an injury. And sure as hell, he got sacked 4 times in the quarter of play that he participated in. So it's possible that he could have. I look at it, and maybe I'm too hard lined with this, but there's a 100% chance of injury in football. So I'm still kind of like, yeah, but I'd rather see him than not. If he's available. If he's available. I want to preface that. And if they determine that he's not going to be available, then there's no discussion to be had. But if Will Levis is available, my preference would be to see him. I understand why people are going to push back on that. I understand why people are going to scream at me about that. I can't get myself to make it make sense in my head that a football player cannot benefit, especially this one, from playing more football than less.
If he is unable to practice at all this week,
don't play him.
Would you still say throw him out there?
Don't, because if he hasn't practiced at all this week, then Tannehill has already been they've already been preparing for him to not play.
Like I was with you last week. He was a full participant every single day.
Sure.
So I said play him. But
again,
if that's not the case this week, then it gets tougher.
If he's limited today and full Thursday and Friday, okay, then I'm open I'm open to talk about it. If he doesn't practice at all this week, then obviously he's not going to play. If he's limited all week during practice, then you're in some kind of middle ground. Like, there can be nuance to this. It's not outright play him or don't. You have to let the week of work play itself out and how he responds to treatment. And he wants to play. Now, whether you should acquiesce to that as the coaching staff of the front office, just because he wants to play doesn't mean that you have to play him. But I do think it's a hard thing as a coach to be like, no, buddy, we understand that you've worked hard all week to get back and get ready, but we just don't think you're right. Now, it's also your responsibility to do that if you think it's in his best interest. It's not an easy decision because I think a lot of people want to make it an easy decision. All I'm saying is I don't think it's as cut and dry as some of you want to make it, even though you get to be right this week after Houston.
GB on the F&M Bank chat says, Vrabel owes my child $1.
Only $1 that you're giving out from the Tooth Fairy, or that the Tooth Fairy's giving
what
out.
were you getting, 50s or Charles Schwab stock under your pillow?
No, stock only for Christmas.
Yeah, 50 cents to $1.
I feel like,
very reasonable from the Tooth Fairy.
Oh, I for sure 10s.
10s?
Yeah. A 10 from the Tooth Fairy is not untenable.
Don't ever let this man tell you he's a man of the people.
When have I ever tried? Polls, please.
Not now, Jenny. I'm on the radio. Buck Rising gave me a job. Said something about a poll update. Hope that wasn't at that club where you became a folk singer. Anyway, Buck Rising's producer and correspondent has the final poll update. I'm not a smart man, but I know who Lucas Panzica is.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? Jeffrey says Alabama's play calling on the last play of the game.
I don't think so. I just think they botched it. Like, if Saban had a fine explanation, I thought if they blocked up the play correctly, like, I know people are going to look at it as empty backfield, but, like, the play call was not the issue. The fact was that they didn't execute it properly.
Sebastian says it was the refs in the Lions-Cowboys game. Brendan says it was Texas fans thinking that the last play in the Sugar Bowl was pass interference. I had not seen that outcry, but that would be dumb if Texas fans are banging the table saying there should have been a flag, because there shouldn't have been.
Well, listen, Texas fans should not be participating in any dialogue whatsoever based on the one representative that they have all over the internet screaming, "Remember me, mother bleepers,"
oh my goodness,
at a bunch of 18-year-olds. The fact that nobody submitted that for the dumbest thing in sports this week, I mean, I'm talking just microaggression for somebody who's probably dealing with micro things in other places in his life, all right? Like, I could not have less respect for that loser.
Are you as interested in Mike Vrabel's job or in Mike Vrabel job rumors as NFL media seems to be? 80% say no.
I'm surprised, given that that's a social media specific poll. Now maybe there's some people who are saying, no, I don't actually care, and then consuming this stuff on a rate. Like, I bet it's not 80% genuinely, but I think people are largely over it. Like, the ones who are paying attention to the situation understand that it would have to take such an extreme move like him asking for his way out to even start a thought process like that, and we're nowhere close to that.
How would you fix college football? Karen says put a limit on the portal. Kenneth says add a college football commissioner and improve the portal process so bowl games aren't left so shorthanded. Jeffrey says have the conferences split the TV money with the players and put a salary cap on every team with a 12-team playoff. It is straight up pro sports now anyway.
I mean, I'm more inclined to go along with that answer than I am, limit the portal. I don't think kids should be punished because of the way that the sport has played itself out.
Roddy says transfer portal should open after the Natty. Again, that wouldn't work. Kids have to enroll in school. I think there should be more NIL incentives based on bowl games. And not just for the players. I don't know who the Pop-Tart mascot is, who's under that costume, but pay that person. Pay that person for the marketing dollars they made, Pop-Tarts, In the Pop-Tart Bowl?
That person absolutely earned all the attention and any dividends that Pop-Tarts made off the Pop-Tart Bowl. Absolutely, a percentage should go to the Pop-Tart. Somebody said of Vrabel, so 11-32 isn't extreme enough. Are they 11-32 in the last 2 seasons? I don't think that's right.
They 7 wins last season, 5 this season. It's not 11.
No.
It's close. Is there a case for anyone other than Lamar Jackson for MVP? 57% say no.
No.
And those are the poll.
All right, very good. That's the show. We're gonna see if we can get Will Levis on the air to help Shane Lucas at some point this week. We're going to do an episode of The Install this afternoon. We'll be talking a lot about the teams that clinched the postseason. We'll get into a little bit of Titan stuff as well, so you can check that out on 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel later today. Trippin' Titan says you guys are getting better at math, I see. Yes, we're just not giving you answers. You see how Lucas did that? He said, it's not 11, but it's close. That's right. It's 12. I'll talk to you guys tonight on Primetime. Blaine and Mickey are next.